May our chalice be a light for all that's good and kind and right.
Well, good morning, everyone. That was Johanna Chang doing our chalice lighting for us this morning. I'm Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And our church is built on land that's the traditional territory of the indigenous Iowa people. I ask every week that when you hear a land acknowledgement, you consider donating at least $1 to indigenous owned, run, or supporting programs locally. These opening words are from We Travel This Road Together by Tess Bomberger. From the busyness of every day, we gather once a week to remember who we are and to dream of who we might become. We travel this road together. As companions on this journey, we share the milestones we meet along the way. Individual moments of joy and sorrow become shared moments of comfort and celebration. We traveled this road together. We share this journey across differences of belief and opinion because we value diversity and care for one another. Today, as we take the next steps, let us notice our fellow travelers, the burdens that they carry, the songs that inspire their hearts. As we gather in beloved community, let us open the holy havens of our hearts. Let us share the sacred places of our souls, for we are pilgrims on a common path, and we travel this road together. So come and let us celebrate.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. My name is Patty Notch, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Thank you for joining us. We welcome all of you to our service, especially those of you who are searching for something more love, more joy, more freedom, more service, more learning. Whether it's your first time in a service with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find here questions that stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving radically, serving justly, and growing spiritually and emotionally. Our gathering song this morning is number 160, Far Too Long by Fear Divided. Please keep your mics muted and simply sing along at home if you would like.
Thank you so much, Bruce and Barb. That was wonderful. We have a special guest with us today to do our children's chapel. Mary Ellen Miller has volunteered to help, and she is going to be reading Stone Soup. So, Mary Ellen, if you're here, go ahead and unmute, turn your camera on, and it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Ellen Miller, she, her, her. As I read this well-known fable, Stone Soup, I would like you and invite you to think about our kitchen project. We are in the last week of a $40,000 match offer from a generous member. We have raised $35,000 of that $40,000. With 1 week to go, we hope you will consider pitching in your carrot, your onion, or your potato to help us reach this goal. Stone Soup, an old fable. 3 soldiers trudged down a road in a strange country. They were on their way home from the wars. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they hadn't eaten anything in 2 days. "Oh, how I'd like a good dinner tonight," said the first. "Yeah, and a bed to sleep in," said the second. "Yeah, but all that's not possible. We must march on." So on they marched. Suddenly ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. "Maybe we'll find a bite to eat there," said the first. "And a loft to sleep in," said the second. "Nah, no harm in asking," said the third. Now the peasants in that place feared strangers. When they heard that 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked among themselves. There come 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, and we have little enough for ourselves. So they hurried to hide all their food. They pushed sacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down their wells. They spread old quilts over the carrot bins. They hid their cabbages and potatoes under the beds, and they hung their meat in the cellars. They hid all they had to eat, and then they waited. The soldiers stopped first at the house of Paul and Francois. Good evening to you. Could you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers? Well, we have no food for ourselves for 3 days, said Paul. Francois made a sad face. It's been a poor harvest. The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. Could you spare a bit of food and have you some corner where we could sleep for the night? Oh, no, said Albert. We gave all we could spare to the soldiers who came before you. Our beds are full, said Louise. At Vincent and Marie's, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all the grain must be kept for seed. So it went throughout the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away, and they all had good reasons. One family had used the grain for feed. Another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to fill. The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The 3 soldiers talked together. The first soldier called out, "Good people!" The peasants drew near. "We're 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We've asked you for food, and you have no food. Well then, we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. Stone soup? Now that might be something to know about. First, we need a large iron pot. Well, the pheasants brought the largest pot they could find. Well, it's none too large, but it'll do. And, now water to fill it and a fire to heat it. It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square, and the pot was set to boil. And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones. Well, those were easy enough to find. The peasants' eyes grew round as they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. Any soup needs salt and pepper, said the soldiers, or the children ran to fetch salt and pepper. Stones like these generally make good soup, but if there were carrots, it'd be much better. Why, I think I have a carrot or 2, said Francois, and she came back with an apron full of carrots. A good stone soup should have some cabbage, said the soldiers, but no use asking for what you don't have. Oh, I think I could find a cabbage somewhere, said Marie, and she hurried home, and back she came with cabbages from the cupboard under her bed. Well, if only we had a bit of beef and a few potatoes, this soup would be good enough for a rich man's table. Well, the peasants thought that over. They remembered their potatoes and the sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup, and all from just a few stones? It just seemed like magic. Ah, sighed the soldiers as they stirred in the beef and the potatoes. If we only had a little barley and a cup of milk, this soup would be fit for the king himself. Indeed, He asked for just such a soup when he last dined with us. Well, the peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king? Well, no use asking for what you don't have. Well, the peasants brought their barley out from their lots and brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming broth while the peasants stared. At last, the soup was ready. "Oh, all of you shall taste," the soldier said, "but first a table must be set." Great tables were placed in the square, and all around were lighted candles, and they ate and tasted, and oh, such a soup! And how it smelled! Truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and cider? Sure, a banquet was soon spread, and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such a soup. And fancy that, made from just 3 stones. As you ponder on this old fable of community coming together to share what they had for the benefit of all, I invite you to consider the opportunity to make a gift to the Kitchen Project and to help us meet this generous offer of $40,000. Have a great week.
Thank you so much for sharing that story and for your words about the Kitchen Project. I offer our offering words today with seriousness and gravity as usual. At a stewardship meeting, a UU congregation's wealthiest member decided to share a portion of his faith story. "I'm a millionaire," he said, "and I attribute it all to the rich blessings of this church in my life. I still remember the turning point of my faith like yesterday. I had just earned my very first dollar, and I went to an RE meeting that night, and the speaker was an activist who told about his work and tried to get the children interested. I knew that I only had a dollar bill, and I had to either give it all to church work or forget about it, because who wants 50 cents? At least that's what I thought. So at that moment, I decided to give my whole dollar to good work, everything I had. I believe that the universe has blessed this decision, and it's why I'm a rich man today." He sat down, and the chair of the stewardship committee leaned over and said, "What a wonderful story. I dare you to do it again. And now I dare you." The morning offering will now be given and received through a link in the chat. Won't you please give generously to your church and consider giving a little more to the Kitchen Project? The morning offering will now be given and received. 1/2 of our plate goes to our internal social justice programs, and 1/2 goes to our Faith in Action partners, Knock and Drop and Just Voices. Thank you all so much for all the gifts that you give to this community. As we enter into a time of meditation, I ask that you get comfortable in your seat and please join me in 1 minute of silence, meditation, or prayer. We come together here in community every week, in part to share our laughter and our tears and to be there for one another in the good times and the bad times and in all the in-between times. We ask that you hold in your thoughts and your prayers this week Jane Bell. Jane has been moved to the memory care unit at Ramsey. She's having a difficult time adjusting. And I'm going to put the address in the chat. She would really appreciate having cards. The address is in the chat. We have a small joy today. We are doing budget roundtables at 11:30 a.m. So that is in the forum space today. Use the forum link at 11:30. Come on in and join Charlie and I for the budget roundtables. Let's talk about our budget for next year. And let's share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention this week. You're welcome to type their name in the chat. May the love of our community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May the work of our hands and our hearts support and aid and comfort all those who hunger or thirst for food or water, justice or freedom. May we never look away when we're needed. May those who are grieving be comforted. May those who are tired find rest. May the broken places be healed. And may those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant. Every week we light 3 real or virtual candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared here, one for the names written, and one last candle for all the joys and all the sorrows that are deeply held, but remain unspoken here today.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul.
Our first reading this morning is from David Brooks. The nuclear family was a mistake. America now has two entirely different family regimes. Among the highly educated, family patterns are almost as stable as they were in the 1950s. Among the less fortunate, family life is often utter chaos. There's a reason for that divide. Affluent people have the resources to effectively buy extended family in order to shore themselves up. Think of all the child-rearing labor affluent parents now buy that used to be done by extended kin: babysitting, professional childcare, tutoring, coaching, therapy, expensive after-school programs. For that matter, think of how the affluent can hire therapists and life coaches for themselves as replacement for kin or close friends. These expensive tools and services not only support children's development and help prepare them to compete in the meritocracy, by reducing stress and time commitments for parents, they preserve the amity of marriage. Affluent conservatives often pat themselves on the back for having stable nuclear families. They preach that everybody else should build stable families too. But then they ignore one of the main reasons their own families are stable. They can afford to purchase the support that extended family used to provide. And the people they preach at, further down the income scale, cannot. Our special music this morning features Julie Murphy on the clarinet playing Romance by G. Finzi. Thank you, Julie. Our second reading this morning is from Poverty and the Pantry by Amy Petrie Shaw. I just made squash soup. It took about 15 minutes to prepare. It will cook for 10 minutes and then I will puree it. My chef's knives and cleaver make the chopping go fast. Easy, right? A healthy dinner with almost no effort. 8 meals for under $1 per serving. I am a kitchen god. Why don't poor people make such easy food instead of wasting their money at McDonald's? Why don't they just do it right? It's expensive to live poor. I could make that soup today, but 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been so easy. Making the same soup would have gone from being a 30-minute trip to the store and a 30-minute total prep to table experience to something much, much more serious. It would have become a luxury. Making that cheap soup would have looked like this. Get off work at 7 a.m., walk to the local Kroger, realize I could afford either the spices or the squash, buy the spices in the plastic half-size jars, exactly enough for this recipe. I can't afford to keep large amounts of something that I might never use again. Wait 2 weeks for the next payday. The store has no squash. Buy broth. The store with squash is 6 miles away. Risk the drive. Buy squash that is 10% more expensive because I am now shopping in an upscale neighborhood. Go home and go to sleep. No time to cook. Go to work at 3 p.m. the next day. Next day off, haul out the 20-year-old crock pot. Attempt to cut the squash with a dollar store knife. Break knife. Attempt to peel squash with a dollar store peeler. Break peeler. Walk to dollar store for a new knife, but I can no longer afford a can of coffee, so I'll be drinking water for the next 2 weeks. 90 minutes to carefully peel and section squash. Saute onions and garlic and spices in pan. Use extra oil because the pan is peeling and sticks. Toss all ingredients in crock pot. Set alarm to wake up every 2 hours because both the house wiring and the pot are old and a surge could cause a fire. There are no smoke alarms. Allow soup to cook for 8 hours using lots of electricity. When soup is done, use potato masher to puree. Puree process takes 40 minutes, and there are still some lumps. Taste the soup and realize that it needs more onion, but there isn't any more because Save-A-Lot doesn't sell onions in a bag. It sells them one yellow onion at a time. And I only bought exactly what I was supposed to need. Add more salt instead. Use spread containers to freeze leftovers. The containers are thin and will potentially leach chemicals into the hot soup. They will allow freezer burn in a week. I lose all the food in the fridge and freezer 3 days later when the old fridge door comes open while I'm at work. The one bowl of soup I actually got to eat cost me $8 in materials, 11 hours of time, and $1.23 in electricity. It cost me another $1 in gas, and I had to wake up 4 times. Same soup, same me, different worlds. Our centering song today is number 354. We Laugh, We Cry, verses 1 and 4. Please keep your mics muted and sing along at home if you would like.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing a song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need close friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is an answer.
Thank you so much, Bruce and Barb. Somewhere around 1985, I visited Estill County, Kentucky for the very first time. And for those of you who are not familiar with that area, it's part of what is called Appalachia. I went as part of a service project with APSO, Appalachian People's Service Organization. And we were there to put in water systems and septic systems for families that were a few mountains over from the Red River Gorge. It was an amazing trip, mostly because of the people there. And the first local teenager who rushed out to offer help and to welcome us and to bring us drinks of his well water was a young man named Manfred. And after getting to know him for a few days, we got to go see where Manfred lived. This is in 1985. They had a wood stove for cooking and heating. and a cistern that collected water. They did have electricity. There was a massive satellite dish out in the yard because you needed one to get any television reception in the mountains. But the roof was made out of shingles and tar paper and long slabs of tin and some tarps. And Manfred showed us very, very proudly his personal books. He had 4 or 5 of them. He'd bought them at school book fairs with his own money, and he kept them in a plastic freezer bag so that they wouldn't get ruined when the roof leaked, because his room was right under the eaves. He had never seen or heard of a mall. He had heard of elevators and escalators, but he couldn't imagine riding on one of those or what that would be like. And he'd actually left school a year before at 16 so that he could get what he considered to be an amazing job, a roofing job with his dad. He told us together they made about $450 a month after taxes, and they were able to work April through October each year. That's $3,150 a year. That would have been a little less than half the poverty level at the time. And Manfred and his dad considered themselves amazingly lucky. They had an old truck that worked well. They owned their house and land free and clear. They knew how to cook and hunt. They had friends that traded them fruit for the vegetables they grew. They were making it. They had one another, and they had a firm community holding them up. A few years back, an anti-poverty program came out called Living Below the Line, and some of you may have heard about it. Gwyneth Paltrow was probably one of the biggest celebrities that actually tried it. And the way the program worked is it challenged people to feed themselves for $1.50 per person per day for 5 days. And when Living Below the Line first came out, I thought about Manfred, who was doing the equivalent, he and his father, of feeding themselves on about 50 cents a day. When Gwyneth Paltrow tried this, she couldn't even make it through the first shopping trip because she couldn't understand. She literally couldn't understand that she couldn't go to the all organic grocery that she preferred. And so they couldn't make it through the first day because she spent her $1.50 on one apple, and then had to go and try to figure out, well, I can't do anything. Poverty level today for a family of 4 is $24,000. For a family of 2, it would be about $15,000, $15,900. Because of the mortgage bubble that burst back in 2008 or so, many low-income families live in apartment buildings or subsidized housing, and they can't put in Manfred's wood-burning stove, and they can't dig a cistern, certainly. We pay for city water and sewage, and in places like Flint, the city water isn't drinkable. There aren't places to grow vegetables and fruit, and automation and competition make semi-skilled labor jobs harder and harder to find. So how are we doing as a country right now? Well, 11.4% of American households, 37 million people, live below the poverty level. I know quite a few people who've tried the Living Below the Line project. Some of you may have. Most people found that there was just no way to make it work. Their children had sporting events and needed more food than that. You know, their son or daughter was going to go play in a soccer game, and they weren't willing to have them do that for 5 days on minimal food that was not familiar. Many people had meetings at work that required them to buy coffee or lunch. Almost all the people that have tried it were able to drive to the store in their own car to find what they wanted at the first store they went to, and come home and cook in pots and pans that they already owned, with spices they already had in the cupboard, with skills they learned way before they tried this. But for people who live this way all the time, they have no ability to walk away. Living below the line hit home for people, but the problem was they could just quit. According to the World Bank, you're in extreme poverty if you're short of food for all or part of the year, often only eating one meal a day, sometimes having to choose between feeding your children and feeding yourself, sometimes able to do neither. You can't save money. If a family member gets ill, you need to get the money to see a doctor, or if crops fail or jobs fails and you have nothing to eat, you have to borrow from a local money lender. And they'll charge you as much interest as the debt continues to mount, and you'll never be free of it. These are the payday lenders and similar things where you can't ever get out from under it. Poverty means you can't afford to send your children to school, or if they do go to school, you have to take them out again if the harvest is poor or you lose your job. It takes everything you have to meet whatever the state and federal requirement for education is, because your kids don't have clothes, don't have shoes. You live in an unstable house made with things you need to rebuild every 2 or 3 years, or in severe weather. You live in housing that the landlord doesn't maintain. You have no nearby source of safe drinking water, or you have to carry your water a long way. Even then, it can make you ill unless you boil it. This can be sub-Saharan Africa, or Detroit, or Youngstown, or Flint. But the difference between Manfred and his dad and a family living in inner city Chicago, or Milwaukee, or Des Moines, or Flint, well, the difference is us. The difference is us. The community. For Appalachian families 30 years ago, community elevated you from desperately poor to making it. It was stone soup. Everybody kicked in. Communities supported you, helped you through. But as Brooke said, families today lack that. They may live hundreds or even thousands of miles from their actual nuclear family. And it's up to us, the people who think everybody should have a voice and everyone is entitled to worth. But we have to step forward and live into those values, and we can certainly do that. A few years ago, Peter Singer wrote an excellent book called The Life You Can Save. It's definitely worth reading. Peter Singer, The Life You Can Save. It explored extreme poverty around the world, and it put forth a case for assessing your life and determining what it is you really need and what is excessive, and finding ways to combat poverty on a global scale. When it was written, he didn't find most Americans to live in extreme poverty. But over the last 10 years, with the widening economic divide, a case could now be made for America and Americans as one of the groups who need help. Singer explains poverty. He looks at how it happens and how it keeps happening and what will destroy it. He investigates the arguments against destroying it. And he forces readers to look hard at the moral and ethical implications of inequality. So do yourself a favor, get the book. It's on Amazon. You can find used copies for a penny. It's on different kinds of used books all over the place. It's worth it. He has some proposals that most people won't accept. Most of us will not sell our house and go to work in urban Washington, D.C., or in Flint, or in Youngstown. But he puts forth one suggestion that I can't ignore. He uses this example. You are dressed in your best on your way to a special event. And on the way, you see a toddler who has fallen into a muddy pond and is drowning. No one else is there. No one is paying any attention. Without you, the child will die. And you can save them without any risk to your own life. This is a puddle. But your lovely clothing and your dress shoes are going to get ruined. And you got to think about that for a minute. And someone asked, what's the name of the book? This is Peter Singer, The Life You Can Save. And I'll put that in the chat in just a minute. Singer says, if you agree that you should ruin those fancy dress clothes to save the child, then you should be able to recognize that we have an ethical responsibility to ruin the shirt, to give away the excess, to save the life of those drowning without you. Because we're a community. We are the people that can make the difference. You know, in September, there's a Jewish festival, the Festival of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And it commemorates all the years of wandering the Jews did, the little huts they built to shelter themselves, and the fact that through it all, they remained community. They shared what they had with one another. Atheism says care for one another out of enlightened self-interest, if nothing else. It makes the most sense not to have a poverty class. A poverty class cannot participate. Buddhism says let go of your attachment to things, and that desire to have doesn't gain you wisdom. Christianity is blunt. The book of Luke, Jesus says, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then follow me. Winning at life isn't about how much you spend on clothing or a new bike or a summer house. I'm no wiser wearing fancy robes and a $400 stole than I am wearing a t-shirt and jeans. Some people will hear me better in the jeans and the tennis shoes. So take some time over the rest of this year and think about what it means to be beloved community to those surviving below the line. What can you do? Well, read The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer. Understand how poverty happens. I would suggest that you try living below the line at least once, even if it's only for a few days, and even if you quit almost immediately. Try feeding yourself on $1.50 a day per person. Try it for 2 days, if nothing else. Educate yourself on what poverty in America today really looks and feels like. Another thing you can do is to join the fight for a reasonable minimum wage. You can commit to donating financially to fight poverty. I personally take Peter Singer's advice to heart. I joined the plainclothes movement years and years ago. Every year, I donate the money that I would have spent on new or expensive clothing to buy clothing for the homeless. I live in only simple clothing, easily obtainable, easily replaceable. And I write down every time that I wish I could go have the brand new shirt, the fancy pair of pants, the expensive shoes. I write down what they would have cost. And at the end of the year, I donate that money. And last, commit to supporting your church so that we in turn can continue to educate and fight poverty as a group, so that feds can continue to feed people, so that our new kitchen can help to educate people on ways to eat healthy and ethically, so that our vegan meals can continue. All these challenges aren't insignificant, but our faith, our belief in humanity, calls us to deeds and not creeds, and these deeds are well within what we can do. So challenge yourself. Choose what sacrifices you would make to live James Luther Adams' examined life that's done meaningfully. How will you help those surviving below the line? You don't have to climb the whole mountain, just take a step. How will you help make their numbers smaller and their burdens lighter? We're all blessed in a lot of ways. So, how are you going to share your blessings this year? Amen.
We extinguish our chalice, but we remember the call to cherish life's blessings and to share them gladly with one another. Our final song today is number 113, Where is Our Holy Church? Please keep your mics muted and sing along at home if you would like.
Where is our holy church? Where is Saint class unite as equal persons in the search for beauty, truth, and right? Where is our holy writ? Where a human heart, a sacred torch of truth has lit by inspiration taught? Where is our Holy One? A mighty host respond. The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond. Where is our holy land? Within the human soul, where our few minds truly seek with character the goal. Where is our paradise in aspiration's sight, wherein we hope to see arise 10,000 years of right?
The service has ended and your service begins again. Peace, ashe, and may it be so.